Hey guys, and welcome back to our second edition of Neurodiversity Newsstand. I'm Becca Laurie Hector, your host of Neurodiversity Newsstand, and also the admin of our group, the creator of our physical group, Neurodiversity Newsstand. Oh, that's a little high. Okay, let's try that. In any case, so welcome back. Here we are talking about the news. But before I get into the news, let me kind of lay on you some stuff I've been thinking about. So I've been struggling myself this week with kind of the inertia that comes with depression. And so I've been in this big recovery cycle since the last employment and all of that. And I've been really reviewing how I fell into a really kind of same trap. You know, I'm really involved in the autism community, and because of that, I think I want the world to move faster than it is, and I want to imagine that people are better than they are, or can catch up faster than they are. But this week I really kind of dipped into a deeper depression when it became super duper clear to me that in this particular case, I just have to kind of let it go. Like, the world isn't ready for us autistics. They're not. There's a chunk of the population of the world that is just not ready to kind of digest what it means to accept the neurodiverse, what it means to kind of alter the way things have always been done. That attitude is so pervasive, I think, in so much of our culture, that the idea that there's another way to think or another way to be, kind of just, it's like, I don't know, it's beyond ableism. It's because in ableism, I feel like there's an understanding somewhat that there's a difference. It's almost like negative ableism. It's like, it's just so far back from even thinking about the possibility that there's different kinds of brains, that, or that the way that things have always been done may not be necessarily the right way, or the only way, I guess. Better, the only way. That's really what I mean to say. In any case, so what I really decided that even though I'm ready, and a good chunk of our community is ready for the world to hurry up and be ready for us and just accept us already and just understand we've been here this whole time, and it's so absurd, but it is so parallel to the LGBTQIA community that I can't even begin to tell you. I'm going to be talking about that. I wrote a piece back in like 2012, 2013 about this, and I'm going to resurrect it and kind of take a look at it and rethink about this, because there is so much to be learned from the people who have tried to get their civil rights, get their equal rights, be seen equally in the world and in society, and for such a long time, that we're not the first ones. Autistics are certainly not the first ones. The neurodiverse are not the first ones. And so very clearly in my head is the very recent history of the LGBTQIA community. But prior to that, we of course were talking about blacks and whites, and racism as that kind of barrier, right? And so all of these groups have gone through the growing pains that we're going through right now, I think, as a community. And I feel like, you know, as an advocate, I'm sort of on the front line of that growth, and I see a lot of it, and I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated by the slow pace of it all, I guess. But what it made me conclude about my life is that I had to remember this little tiptoe out of our community and into the real world. My hair is making me insane right now. Sorry, I got a haircut, and you know when you get a haircut and it's like doesn't behave for the first couple of days? Well, that's how I feel. My hair is always messy, and I never look at it except for when we're doing this. When I'm doing this with you guys, then I'm constantly looking at my hair. I otherwise never look in a mirror, so I shock myself often when I go to do this video. In any case, but yeah, so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about how I just need to realize that the world is just that slow, and they're just not ready, which means in my lifetime, I may not see equality in the workplace for a bit. And then for me, that means trying to figure out another way to cope and exist and survive and thrive in this world without employment being accessible to me. And that means making a lot of stuff up. I think, for me, because I want to live the life that I'm living. I want to live where I'm living. I don't want to have to give up what I worked so hard to get to, but I also don't want to not be able to enjoy it because I'm forcing myself to mask all the time, or I'm forcing myself to live in a box. So on that front, I'm thinking a lot about work and what I could do with that. I could do that people will appreciate and value as work enough to pay me to do it, I guess, is really what work comes down to. So I'm going to be working a lot on my writing, and I've been saying that a lot, but I do most of my writing in here. In fact, I don't ever put pen to paper. I make little notes to myself, and I don't even use pen and paper to do that. I do it on my phone. It's ridiculous. I keep little Google Keep notes of all my ideas, and I add on to them, and kind of when I can hear the piece complete in my head and I can feel the tone that's going to run through the whole thing, then I can sit down and write. And so I've been working in here on a lot of pieces and a lot of things. I'm going to be working on a book proposal, which I'm super excited about, you guys. It's going to be all about advocacy. So we'll be able to talk about that advocacy in the now, not any other kind of advocacy, and sort of the history of our advocacy, I guess. But yeah, I'm going to be working on a bunch of different little writing projects, some for myself, some for others, and I'll be doing a bunch of keynotes and things like that, talking about a lot of the stuff that I talk to you guys about, the self-defined living piece that we talk about a lot, which is when I talk about those words and what do they mean to you, and oh, let's redefine them and all that stuff. So that's what's going on for me kind of in this planet. The next thing that I was like working on, because I'm going to try this week to do a better video than last week, because as you saw, it got cut off in the middle because I was going to try and use my screen to look at our news so that I could make sure I was being accurate. Well, that kind of didn't work. So my IT guy, aka Antonio, came up with a brilliant idea, because we have a couple of extra monitors sitting around. So what I think we're going to do is put an extra monitor behind my laptop, and that'll be more permanent, so I can use a second screen, I guess, to read the news and that kind of stuff, or whatever notes I have to myself, which should make it easier than the current system, which is, oh, you guys, this is terrible. Yeah, those are my notes for today when I get to the news, because I don't script anything, as you guys know, and I know that I should probably learn how to edit them, but I kind of like that they're not edited, and I just kind of do it off the cuff so that you guys get the real me, and I get to be authentic and real in the advocacy that I do, and that's kind of where I'm at with that. So I'm going to work on that, but for now I am with my handy dandy cell phone and Post-it notes to get us through today. What else can I share with you guys? I guess that's kind of all I have going on now. If I think of something else, it'll come up towards the end, I'm sure. So the news, here we are, Neurodiversity Newsstand. Let's do this week's news in a nutshell. Okay, big ones for this week, not so much. It was a super, super slow news week this week for us in the autism and neurodiversity communities. We had a few things come up, but nothing really as kind of share-worthy as kind of happened last week for us. But that's okay. Slow news weeks happened, and sometimes no news is good news, right? So I'd rather be talking about how it's a slow week than talking about some really horrible bit of news that hits our community. In any case, we did have a few things that I thought were sort of exciting this week. The Julia controversy continues. So again, if you didn't catch last week's or weren't caught up with the news from last week, AANE, which is the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, had partnered with Sesame Street to help build the Julia character and what was going on with Julia, and be an advisor in that capacity. However, recently, Sesame Street also partnered with Autism Speaks, which is one of the first groups, I think, that really put autism kind of on the front lines, and it was really early on, and they are a cure-based organization. That is their history. And so they are not liked by many autistics, myself included. It makes it hard to work with them because a lot of the stuff that they do, including what they did with the Sesame Street PSAs, is try to sneak in all this really negative kind of feelings about an autism diagnosis and how a parent may feel at the time of diagnosis, which is not at all helpful to their child. And so adult autistics have been talking about that a lot. Nonetheless, because they have gone ahead and done these PSAs with that language as a part of it, ASAN was really opposed to it, made it all well known that that's what was going on to everybody, and still Sesame Street continued to do the PSAs. So ASAN has now broken off their partnership with Sesame Street over Sesame Street's partnership with Autism Speaks. In any case, our kind of argumentation about that continued this week. We were all posting about it. It was in Newsweek, which I shared that with you because that's the part of it that I think is so interesting. When I used to share news, right, it was all from universities and research journals, things like that. We would have our blogs, and those things were starting to come out, the advocate and autistic blogs, and those I was able to share those. But I've watched the news change. I've watched autism appear in more and more mainstream media. So I point out to you that this story has made it to Newsweek, as in there's probably people with opinions about it in the mainstream. And that's the part that's most important, is the visibility. So yay for this story being important enough to make it to Newsweek. Boo for Sesame Street not respecting their partnership with ASAN and picking up a relationship with Autism Speaks. Okay, so that's that story. Story number 2, again, I bring up because of its visibility. So we talked about Hannah Gatsby last week, and this week I'm going to talk to you about Amy Schumer. So this week, Amy Schumer, an article came out where, well, let me backtrack first. So Amy Schumer, she's a comedian. She's often on Comedy Central, things like that. It came out in a news story where she disclosed that her husband, Chris Fisher, is on the autism spectrum. And so it was a really fantastic article. She talked a lot about how the things that, are part of his autism are in fact the things that she fell in love with him for, etc., etc. Well, she's pregnant now, and then she had a baby. Yay, that's usually what happens after pregnancy, and I guess that's what they wanted. Not myself. In any case, so she had a baby boy, and she did another interview, and out it came in the Mighty this week, where Amy Schumer was asked by someone how she was going to cope, and that was the word that was used, how she was going to cope if her son was on the spectrum like her husband. And again, Amy brought up that all the things that she fell in love with her husband for are many of the reasons that he got diagnosed on the spectrum, and that if is she supposed to not want her child to be as wonderful as her husband? And why would, and she brought up the use of the word cope, that it's not something she will ever have to cope with because it's not something she feels she'd have to deal with in that way, in a negative way. And that when we talk about coping with it, we're talking about it in a negative way. So in any case, that was the Amy Schumer article. I dropped my rock somewhere and I don't know where it is. In any case, that was the Amy Schumer article, and again, I bring that one up because it's somebody who has visibility talking again about autism in a positive light. So thank you for that, Amy Schumer. We appreciate it. Thanks for bringing it out there from the Mighty. Here's another one. This was a good one, and I'm really kind of surprised about why it didn't get shared more. I thought that it would get more traction than this because I thought it was a really, really good piece. In any case, there was an article in the New York Times, yay New York Times, talking about how to disclose and whether you should disclose a disability at work. And thanks to New York Times, they mentioned specifically visible and invisible disabilities. So thank you for that, New York Times article, for keeping that part of it real. And so then there was just some general discussion about the disclosure process, whether it can be of value to the person, why it's of value to the person, and why not. So some of the good points that I thought were interesting, right? If you do disclose up front, you get to be your whole authentic self at work. You get to bring that whole person with you to work. And that also you are able to ask for accommodations at that point if you do disclose at work. And so some of the points that were brought up was that if you do disclose at work, there are other kinds of discrimination. So yes, you know that if you disclose at work, they can't fire you necessarily because of your disability, but that there's other forms of discrimination and bullying that occur at the workplace when you do disclose as part of the decision to disclose. And that is a concern to many. right? Many of us don't want to be seen as our disability or as everything we do is because of our disability, right? Certainly that's my case. People, when I get passionate about something at a job, people, if I disclose, people like to talk about that as part of the autism, that I'm over emotional and I'm overreactive about something if I'm passionate about it. And so, yeah, that's some of the baggage that comes along with disclosing at work. And then they talked about, the fact that it should, what can we do to make that better, and all the places that we want to kind of see it grow. But I loved seeing that the New York Times was talking about it and using those terms and separating it for us in that way. So that was really, really great. I like that. Let's see, what else? Oh, good one. Yes, here's another good visibility piece that I want to talk about. It seems to be the theme for today's kind of news, I guess. Sorry for the camera situation. I must be moving too much. Fidgets. Yes, but here it is. So, GQ, Game Changer of the Year, Greta Thunberg, right? Fantastic. So excited. She's right on the cover talking about climate change. And she is somebody who, as she is lucky enough to have been grown up kind of at this time where she didn't feel like she should have to kind of hide her autism. And so that's been part of who she is out in the public as she's fighting for climate change. And that is that she's also autistic. And so I loved seeing her on the cover of GQ. I love that she's going to be in all over the place. And with her conversation about climate change and how important that is to her, she talks about how it's kind of part of her autism, that she sees it that way. And so I love that she takes her autism with her, because again, we all know we can't take our autism off like it's a handbag. So thank you, Greta, for championing for us, for being really visible about your autism and its positives and negatives. And thanks for just going out and trying to save the world, girl. Way to go. So that was those articles. Okay, so that was like the big news stuff that we had going on. But I want to share some of the other things that we do in Newsstand, because I talked a little bit last week about how we love our cats and we do kind of cat photos and things like that. But we also share memes and cartoons and stuff like that. And sometimes they're really kind of good ones. And I also want people sharing their blogs and things that they write themselves to feel like they can go ahead and promote some of the stuff that they're working on too. So that goes on in our groups. So what I'm going to try to do here at the end of the hardcore news, after I do the news, is I'm going to share with you kind of the bigger or more favorite, I guess, memes from this week, or meme from this week, whatever, and any other kind of interviews or articles of interest that I think had some really great advocates in it, or was shared within the group, that I want to make sure it gets shared again in whatever format I'm sharing. So we'll be doing some of that stuff. And I also want to make sure that I share kind of large events, conferences, things like that are going on in our community, webinars that might be out there. So if you're doing those kind of things, please hop into the Neurodiversity Newsstand group. Go ahead and stick your stuff in there, share it with the group, and I will do my best to mention the ones that are popular here on Neurodiversity Newsstand, including your blogs. Do the same thing with your blogs or your memes or your art or whatever you're working on, because that's the whole point of Neurodiversity Newsstand, is that it's not my group just for my stuff. It is our group for our stuff going on in our community. And so along those lines, I want to say a shout out to Spectrum Cartoon. Really good one this week. I'm a big fan, huge fan of a lot of the cartoons that Spectrum Cartoon does. And I really particularly was touched by this week's one, and it was very authentic and rang home for me. And it was all about how people can say and do kind of really nasty things to you, but when they misinterpret your intentions, that's the most heartbreaking. And for me, that happens a lot. And maybe it's my directness. I don't know. I've tried to kind of figure it out, but mystery to me still. But yeah, when my intentions get misinterpreted, that one really breaks my heart. Because I'm a really kind of loyal, honest person, and so that bugs me. So good cartoon, really loved it, shared it with the group. I will put the link to it in the comments. And podcast interview, Rebecca Cavender, she did her first podcast interview with Audible Autism this week. It was episode 18. Take a listen to that. She's a fun, intuitive writer. She does really neat stuff, and she's, of course, on the spectrum. So give a listen to that. we had 2 blogs this week. One that I want to ask that you participate in, and that was a blog from Krista Holman. She did a shout out, and she's asking, did you relearn to stim after you got diagnosed? And yes, I did. I'm going to answer it first, and then I'm going to say to you guys, go ahead and give an answer in the comments in our group, because it was awesome. It's a good thing to think about. And yes, I had to relearn to stim. I'm certain that I was stimming more obviously as a child, though I'm not aware of it. But as an adult, we definitely are taught, you're learning to hide your kind of body motions. And I definitely have a lot of little stims, and I definitely use those, like tappings of my fingers, and playing with my hair, and things that are more socially, I guess, that you can hide, you can mask using those kind of stims. But when it came to actually using objects to stim with and relearning how good that could be, that I had to totally relearn. And man, was it fun. And I had to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. So shout out to the Fidget Club. Shira, thank you so much for what you do, because she does some fantastic fidgets, and they're kind of divided in sections about what the needs are. As she's an autistic person herself. And so I got a lot of my fidgets to try out from her until I figured out what I really liked. So yes, to Krista Holman's Neurodivergent Rebel, yes, I had to relearn stimming for sure after I got diagnosed. So you guys hop over and see if you want to take a crack at answering that question for her. And the last one that I want to talk about this week, really kind of, it was a really, really good one, but it was old. And so I want to say I've seen it before. I know you guys have probably all seen it before, but it was reshared and getting a re-life this week. And it was called It's Not Me. Sometimes It's Not Me, It's You. And it was on, what was the name of it? We Are Like Your Child Blogspot. That's what it was on originally. And so it's back from February of 2017. But I thought it was a fantastic piece. And it talks about how sometimes it's so difficult to be out in the world when you have autism and you have sensory sensitivities and your own challenges and all of these things. And then on top of it, the world is just so inconsiderate. And rude and loud and lots of other things. And that sometimes, just sometimes, it's not the autistics, but it's you. And sometimes autistics would really love it if you guys could just be a little bit more considerate with your noises. That's a nice way of saying what that blog has to say, but it's important. It's important that we remember as autistics that our needs are just as valuable as other people's needs. So the fact that we need quiet is just as important as somebody else's need to rush and slam a door. And so I love that piece. I would say if you've ever felt that kind of frustration, take a read. You will feel much better and certainly less alone after you read it, because I think we all feel that way. So that's that. So yay. Events. Okay, so I don't have a lot of like big events to share with you. I didn't see any in the group. Nobody really I didn't see any floating around that I thought were interesting to kind of share out with you. So today I'm just going to share with you my stuff that I have coming up in terms of events, because I have one coming up next week. So next Thursday, the 22nd, I'll be doing a webinar that's going to be hosted by AANE. I'm going to put the link to register in the description of the video, so you guys can go ahead and register. I am going to be doing for the very first time a brand new presentation called What is Neurodiversity? So it's going to be kind of a Neurodiversity 101 from my perspective and kind of my best take on it. It's still happening, so it's kind of really hard to sum up something that isn't over yet. And so it'll be fun, but I think I'm going to have a lot of fun with it. I hope to kind of really keep it interesting and keep it entertaining, so it's not just a boring old presentation, but where it's engaging. So I hope you guys will join me and check it out. So that's going to be next Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I will be doing it from Mountain Time here in Colorado, but 7 p.m. and I will leave the link for you to register, and I hope you guys will join me there. I have a couple of speaking engagements coming up. I have one at the end of August 29th, with the ASD Nest program at NYU. So I'll be doing their keynote to bring in the school year this year. And then I'll be doing, what do I have? Coming up in October, I'll be at Love and Autism. And then in November, I'll be at AANE's Fall Conference up in Boston. So that's what I have coming up. But most important thing to worry about and think about is if you can manage to join me or share with your networks, if you can, the webinar coming up that I have next Thursday, or this Thursday coming up. And I hope to see you guys there. And that's all I have to share with you this week on Neurodiversity Newsstand. This week's Neurodiversity News in a nutshell. Thank you for joining me. I'm Becca Laurie Hector, your news lady for the week, I guess. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see them coming, please subscribe, like the video, share it, comment. Let me know you're out there watching. That's really the thing that keeps the next video coming, really, is if I don't know you're watching, I'm going to eventually say, what's the point? So go ahead and subscribe, and I hope to see you guys next Friday with next week's news.